the new age of data, we can lose that empathy. You can make a quick decision and not understand how it impacts someone or even a bigger department, a bigger group, or whatever that downstream impact is. So it's really being a thoughtful leader to take a step back, digest the data, and really make a decision based on the whole landscape.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. This is the next conversation with Collectiv Conversations, where we talk with accounting, finance, FP&A leaders all across the world, looking at people, process, and platform, and the impact that it has on FP&A. I'm really excited today. Today, we're joined by Chris Ward, who is the controller of CCGIQ. And I'm really excited for this conversation. Chris, thank you for joining us to be part of the conversation, and welcome to the Collectiv Conversations.
Thank you. It's an absolute honor to even be considered and to be asked to be a part of it. I'm looking forward to the conversation as well.
Awesome. So right where I want to kick off, right? I think, there's so much stuff going on. And I mean, you being a controller in the trenches of a lot of things going on, like when you think about what would be, I think, like, for you going in this situation so far, what's like been your biggest like takeaway that you've had that's been like that aha moment of the last 8 months of being in the pandemic right now?
I think for me personally, it would say trust in the team and flexibility.
Okay.
So when you're working in the office, it's always something that comes up. It's a like to have, it's a wish, it's one of those core competencies that you put on a performance review. But what happened in 2020, right in March, we all had to go remote. And so if you weren't ready to do that transition immediately, then you had to get ready. So for me, it was making sure that you are putting in place those processes to make sure your team is ready to go no matter what happens, whether that's a pandemic and you have to work remote, whether me as a leader, I'm out, is my team ready to go? But you have to actually make sure that this stuff is in place because you never know what will happen.
Yeah, I think most definitely, like, being agile is what I take away from what you just said, because like some of the teams, man, and I work at an international software company and we have locations all across the world, and you see it in pockets, right? You've seen like our America's operations, we remote environment, empowerment, all these things are kind of normal to us, and we're like, we love this period. But you look at Europeans, or you look at Asia, or you look at Middle Eastern regions that we have. And like you said, that shift from March to being remote, people got smoked on that, And I want to dive in a little deeper from a leadership perspective, because I think, like you said, you leading the team, like what has been some of those leadership styles that, a lot of people are used to when you're in the office, right? You're right there with your team. You can, you can coach, you can have feedback, you can have constructive conversations, you can pop into other different teams. How have you adapted your leadership style through adjusting through that remote culture, and how is that influencing you going forward from a leadership perspective?
I think that's a great question, because one of the things you're not able to do with everyone working remote is be a micromanager. Because how can you micromanage when you're sitting at home in your office and your team is at their home and or in their kitchen, wherever they're working?
Right.
So you immediately had to switch from a micromanager to really just a manager of the process and trusting your team and hoping that it gets done. So for me, we jumped right into having a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting just to touch base, to set out the plan for the day, and to touch base at the end of the day to see how well did we track. And over time, I was able to see that the team is actually making great progress. They are achieving the goals. They're working through their to-do list without me sitting on top of them or making sure that they're doing it, or sitting at their cube, or, hey, can you stop in? Or what are you all talking about? Why is everyone standing in the hallway talking? We have work to do. But really say, this is what the goal is, and this is how far we've gotten through the day. And I will say one thing that I think every leader should consider: over-communicate.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. I love that.
So in the morning meetings, it's my role or my job or my initiative to come in. This is where we're going. This is what's going on. I just talked to the CFO, or I just heard from the CEO, or, hey, this is what keeps me up at night. This is what I'm concerned about. Whether it impacts the team specifically or just us as a business. As you over communicate, it allows your team to feel like they're engaged. I know what's going on, so I can keep my eyes out as well. I can be aware. I know how important my role is to the overall picture. So just over communicate in times like this will make sure that your team stays connected until we get back into the office.
Chris, I absolutely love that. I was talking with someone about that this week about over communication, and I don't think you can over communicate. There's no way of doing that, right?
No.
And to me, I implemented that with not only my direct team but my indirect team. I call it always, I say I'm cascading information, right? And you have that bit of information, and technology is really, really helpful to just get that pieces of information out, both to your direct team and indirect team. So I love your comment about over communicating, right? And also your structure, right? Like, I never thought about having it at the, for me and my team, I have it kind of once a week. Like, we have it on Monday. We set out what our priorities are that week. We talk through any questions. I use that time to cascade in the information, and we kind of have that set time. But I like their structure of talking during the day. It's almost like what engineers have with that sprint kind of mentality, where you just sprint, you get information out, you talk through any bottlenecks you have, any challenges you're facing, and you kind of go throughout. And I've seen different teams kind of adapt to that. Now, talking about communication and technology, right? From a leadership perspective, when you over communicate, what role does you think technology plays in the ability to efficiently and consistently communicate to your team, your direct teams or indirect teams?
So the biggest thing that we lost when we went remote is that impersonal communicating, like in your face. We're meeting in the hallways. We are talking at the cooler or water cooler, refrigerator, whatever you have.
Right.
We lost that. So my team actually does a conference call every morning, and just being able to hear the voice, you can hear emotion, you can hear frustration, you get to understand kind of what that person is going through by hearing their voice. Even though I may not see your face, I can feel a little bit of what you're going through. Now, technology and that and I don't believe we should ever lose that communication style. But through email, you don't get that a lot. You just get the straight sentence, which can be misinterpreted. Did they put the period there? Did they mean something with that period? I see the exclamation point. What are they really trying to say? So you really have to interpret based on what you can assume that person's trying to say through an email. And then we have the instant messenger, which I have several. I have a team-wide instant messenger. I have a department instant messenger chat. I have individual chats with the group, just so that I'm throwing out information to everyone. Is this something that everyone needs to hear, or is this departmental focus, or is this something I just need to say to someone else just to make sure I see you, or I hear you, or I understand what you're going through, or can you look into this? So you have to utilize communication and the different methods based on what you're trying to communicate. What's best? And I'll mention one other thing. What's best for the person you're trying to communicate to?
That's key.
And not what's best or easiest for you. How does this person receive information versus how you feel like communicating, and being diligent about that so that they hear what you're trying to say and they can take that ball and run with it.
Definitely. I love that approach of like, I think so many times leaders, right? And I made this mistake, I sometimes have to, and you're right, I have to check myself sometimes to realize the audience I'm talking to, right?
Yes.
And it's like, as a leader, one thing that I've had to adapt to is like really being laser focused on like, okay, I'm talking to my direct team. So I can be a little bit more raw. I can be a little bit more direct. I can be a little bit more kind of like, for real, this is real talk. Or if I'm talking to our leadership group, I got to kind of be at a super high level, really crystal to the point. And like, that's a challenge, right? Because you have to know your audience. And I think you talked about it like perfectly, being able to not only leverage the tools that you have, but making sure you're having the effective way of communicating.
Yes.
And I can see like across the board, across our leadership, and even some of our senior leaders, right? Like they struggle with that, right? Like either they don't know how to communicate, or like they're not communicating with people at all. And that's like the worst, right? Like when people don't hear from you as a leader, like that's concerning, right? Like People are like, what the hell's going on? Like, one thing
Yeah.
that I've just been challenged with is like my direct manager is the CFO of the company, right? He's a CFO. He's based in Vienna, Austria. His communication style is kind of like, when you don't hear from me, everything's fine.
Everything's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, but okay, like, but
Right.
I don't think everybody else operates like when the CFO's not like talking to people when, we're going through an acquisition, a lot of change is happening in our business. Like that kind of gives people anxiety. So how as a leader have you been able to balance that with your direct teams or indirect teams to say, should I be hands off here? Should I be on? Like, how do you go back through and like prioritize that?
So my personal style, and I even struggle with this, and I tell my team directly, I probably shouldn't have said that. And I say that because
I found myself so many times saying that.
It's just being honest with them as to, I give you an example. I believe in communication, so I set up an annual meeting. I put together a PowerPoint. I wanted us to sit down and have a 4-hour meeting where we dissected the year. We went through each process. We really set out, this is where we ran into issues, and this is how we can improve them for the next year. So I told them, hey, I'm gonna set this meeting up. It's 4 hours. I know it's gonna suck. I know you're gonna have other things going on, but this is really important to me, and I really want us to get a good cadence so we all know what's going on in each of our to-do lists or each of our sections. And I just kept saying that this is gonna suck. I know it's gonna suck. But what that honesty does is allow them to say, all right, he said it's gonna suck. So now I can't complain, right? I already know it's going to be long. I already know it's going to be boring. He already told me how he feels about it. So we're just in this together. So we all going to complain together versus coming in and just saying, this is going to be great. And then people are like, no, but I'm bored and I don't have anyone to talk to about that. Or I can't share my feelings with anyone because they are acting like it's great, but I feel like it sucks. But no one hears that. Am I the only one?
Right.
So my answer to your question is by just being completely honest with your feelings and even some of your concerns, because I guarantee it's somebody in that group, either direct or indirect, that is thinking what you're thinking or would love to say it, but are uncomfortable with saying that.
Definitely. I think you hit on 2 straight points, man. I think one of my major takeaways on the communication side in terms of leadership is being honest and transparent and proactive as possible.
Yes.
Right. There's so much change going on right now that, and I've seen it. And honestly, Chris, I've struggled with this as a leader, seeing other leaders, right? Now is not the time to fake it till you make it, right?
Yes,
Chris, come on. We all know those leaders, right? We all know those
yes.
leaders that sit inside the conversation or the strategic planning conversation or the board meeting, the forecast meeting, the leadership meeting, and they have an answer to every question.
Right.
And I always concern myself with those people, right? Because it's like, you can't figure out everything, right? And to me, it's been like saying, like, I have sat so many times on global leadership calls and said, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not even going to act like I know the answer to it. But one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, find out as much data, research as much as possible, and I'll come back to this with a more concise and clear answer to that.
Yes.
Because I think like that, and like you said, that honesty piece, right? Because honestly, like, people will see right through that stuff, right?
Yes, they do.
And that's the worst thing you can do as a leader, when people see through your masquerade or your theatrics. People see through that. And that honesty and transparency, I think, as a finance leader, particularly in what we do, is so important, right? And shifting gears and talking about one other thing, like I think coin phrase that's been going across in accounting, finance, FP&A is decision making, data-driven decision making, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's a buzzword that people talk about. Oh, we're data-driven decision making. We're data-driven. I think even taking it a step further for us as leaderships in accounting, finance, and FP&A is empathetic data-driven decision making, right? Yes. That has been a highlight for me. So if you think about the way that empathy drives into data decision making, how have you processed that? How have you thought about that in your organization and teams?
So right now we have so much data at our fingertips that sometimes it can be overwhelming and sometimes it can be empowering. And in all of that, as you mentioned, the new age of data, we can lose that empathy. You can make a quick decision and not understand how it impacts someone or even a bigger department, a bigger group, or whatever that downstream impact is. So it's really being a thoughtful leader to take a step back, digest the data, and really make a decision based on the whole landscape. Is this what's in the best interest? Who is the intended party that's supposed to benefit from this decision?
Right.
And then make the decision. Because we can all make a decision that benefits us. We can all make a decision that has that, oh, this is going to make me look good or my department look good, or I'm going to say this because I'm going to get that point. But when you say it, you don't realize that that's not what the intended perspective was supposed to be. It may have been to benefit the other department, but you just said something that was kind of targeted at you. So it's really, in my opinion, being empathetic to the entire landscape of what that data and that decision is. And to your point, understanding where are we going, and not necessarily where are we right now.
Yeah, and I think that's so key, right? Because I think a lot of different times, and I commend one industry, and for the listeners that are in this industry right now, I commend people, all the executives in the airline industry. I love how honest, transparent, and just like forthright that they are about good and bad information, right? You talk about an industry that has on like day one had to be creative in terms not only their financial models and things and business strategies, but the way that they've gone and communicated this to people and good and bad, right? Like there's a lot of industries that are affected, but I salute those CEOs and those leaders that are being as proactive and honest with their employees as possible about the business and about the decisions that they need to make. And I think our role as accounting, finance, FP&A leaders and being so entrenched in the numbers, like you said, spot on, we lose that behind every business decision we make is a person. Right? It's a person that's either going to benefit or not benefit from the decisions that we make. And taking that into the process of how we go through our modeling, our strategizing, our planning, our scenario, analysis that we do is so critical. And also, I think a severely undervalued leadership skill is listening to people, man. Like I mean, Chris, how much have you learned? Like I just I sit in meetings most of the time now. And, I used to be that person that always asked questions and I have learned so much this year by just sitting back and listening.
Yes. And I was a consultant for 6.5 years, accounting finance consultant. So I traveled the country. I did a lot of different projects all around the country. And one of the things that I put down as my attributes is that I listen. And it sounds but that everyone listens. But to be honest, everyone doesn't. Most people want to be that person that responds first, or to tell you this is what you should be doing, or I've seen this before. You don't even need to finish your sentence. I know what the answer is. But if you just sit back and listen, you hear what's being said, but you also hear what's not being said. And then you learn how to address it all. And if you can, if your listeners really appreciate that, listening becomes a talent that I don't believe a lot of people really realize. And then what ends up happening is people they're surprised, right? You're sitting in the meetings. Oh, Chris, you never really say anything, but you always come with the answers. You always kind of know what the thought is, or you always see where we're going, and you're one step ahead. Because I saw the debate and I realized you're not going to win in this debate. I'm just going to go get the data and answer both questions. And so instead of trying to look the part, you learn to be the part.
Man, Chris, dude, that right there, I love it. That's a fire moment right there, dude. Like learning to like not looking the part, but being the part. Seriously, like that is monumental, because I think so many leaders feel like they have to always like be and look the part of being a leader, right? Part of being a really good leader is showing you're vulnerable, right?
Yes.
I think part of being a great leader too is also you don't have all the answers. Like you don't, right? And like exactly what you just mentioned, man, too many leaders during this time want to be in front stage looking the part, right? But they don't want to play it and actively playing it, right? And so many leaders struggle because like you just mentioned, right? Leaders listen to respond. They don't listen to process, to understand. This was a struggle that I had early. I mean, in my career, I always want to be, I was that guy, the smartest person in the room. I always knew the answers. I knew all the data. This is what we should do. Here's how we should go do it. And I alienated myself because people are like, Chris, like, you don't give it time. And this is where the second piece of leadership I think is really important. Patience. Like patience. And that's a struggle that I have. If there's one thing that an interview person asks me in any question, what's your biggest weakness? I'm like, I am impatient, like impatient in everything, for results, for getting my food, for getting my car washed. Like, I'm like, let's get this shit done and get going, But I think like being patient and like trusting the process and not rushing the process, and knowing everybody, it processes differently. They come to a conclusion differently, but organically letting it happen. Like as a leader, letting it play out, even though like you said, this ain't gonna work out. Y'all gonna be fighting each other. That's a horrible idea. But sometimes you gotta let people have that horrible idea. You gotta let them fail. So what, like, when you think about patience in terms of, your process of going through the pandemic, right? Like partnering during the pandemic, let's lead to that question. When you think about partnering during the pandemic, what does that mean to you as a finance executive and leader?
So I will answer that question with the actual situation that I went through. The company acquired two businesses actually at the beginning of the year before the pandemic. So, which went well, was fine. But then as a part of an acquisition, you have all of that accounting data, the historical data, the data that you bought, all of this data, and then future data. So accounts receivable ledgers that you now have of the acquired company that you now have to consolidate with the legacy company. So right in the pandemic, when we went remote, we now had these two. One was in an Excel file and one was system-based, and now I'm being asked to manage both. So I was like, well, I'll tell you what, let's just take this opportunity and take all this Excel data and put it in the system. So imagine doing that. You're taking an accounts receivable subledger, which means every invoice from the acquisition and even old invoices that you purchased, and putting it in the system so that it now comes through systematically. Imagine doing all that work remote.
Wow.
So in doing it remote, I basically told the team, again, this is going to suck. This is a project that I wish we could do in the office where we could lay it out and we can put it on the whiteboard and everyone knows what task, but we have to trust each other getting through this. So this is how it's going to look. We're going to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. We're going to test it. Any issues, we'll go back. So I'm saying that to say, in regards to your question about partnering, is that you really have to lay it out. You can't slow down, and because of anything, you have to keep going. But in that honesty and being transparent and laying it out, you will really work through those situations, and also telling the team this is what we're doing, and then stepping back. And allowing them to go through those issues and allowing them to bump their heads, because as a leader, a good leader will say, I know where they're going to stumble. And I'm going to wait until they stumble, because if they stumble, I know they're on track. If they don't stumble, then I know something's wrong. And depending on how soon they stumble is who would tell you who's really running the show. Like, oh, I know they're going to stumble in like a week when they get to this issue. Should take about a week, but if they come back to you in 2 or 3 days, man, you're on it. You're killing the game. But if it takes a month, what's going on? Like, why haven't we gotten here? So to your point about being patient is not always wanting to address the answer, but building a team so that they can work and learn through those issues as well, and sitting back and allowing them, almost like a child. A child's going to try to walk and they're going to fall. So you don't try to make sure they never fall. You just make sure when they fall, you're there to say, hey, I got you. You're doing great. Stand up. Keep going. Let's do this. Let me move this out your way so you don't fall harder. But I know you're going to fall again, but just know that I'm always here. So in being patient to allow your team to work through those issues allows them to learn as well. Because I can keep going, but let me say this. Let me say this little last piece. What allowing your team to stumble and being patient with them through that process, what it does is you're building up your team and basically creating your replacement. And I think what a lot of leaders don't think about replacing themselves. You can't be promoted. You can't be promoted if you don't have a replacement. So if I train my replacement, now I'm ready to go do something else. But I can't stay in this place and make sure that no one knows what I'm doing, because now I can't get promoted. And that's one of my biggest goals. I want somebody to take my role.
Chris, man, I love that last point. I think for all of our listeners and everybody aspiring to be a leader, that is like leadership 101, right? Mm-hmm. I tell it to my team, right? Every role that I've been in, I tell my team, I'm not teaching you, I'm not developing you, I'm not growing you for the role that you're in now. I'm growing you for that role 2 to 3 years down the line.
Yes.
And every great leader always has their succession planning where they're growing up. Because think about it, like, I don't know about you, but I didn't start professionally off as a leader, right? I started off as a staff accountant. I started off in the mud and in the trenches and getting it out the mud before I got to leadership. But one thing I realized about all the leaders across the way and mentors that I still had, it was always like an escalator, right? Like they got to a certain point, and as a leader, it's your responsibility to bring in that next group of people, right?
Yeah.
To bring in that next, to develop them, to give them all the pitfalls, to help accelerate their learning, to give them the flexibility, right? And what you just mentioned, like so much a part of leaders is this fear mentality. They feel like, well, if I'm empowering you and giving you this, you're going to be the one that making the decisions, and I'm not going to be the one making decisions. Look, listen, as leaders, you have to give people the runway and flexibility to make decisions. And to me, I tell my team, they always have a safety net with me. There's never going to be any decision that they make that doesn't have that safety net. Because at the end of the day, it's always going to be my responsibility. You can make a $600 million journal entry and amortization error. I'm going to step up and say, you know what? This was on my watch. It's my mistake. You always have the safety net. And I think when you allow them, like you said, that patience and that opportunity for them to learn, and when they actually fail and they know that it's like, oh man, you're real. You're for real, Chris. Like, I do have that safety net.
Right.
That's trust. And that's creating a growth environment with people where they're going to thrive. Right. Like my assistant controller, Sharice, like she's exactly that same way. She is high talented, and she's the one that has to get out of her own way. Get out of your own thoughts and just go do it. And I think that level of empowerment, flexibility, and clear, like, look, this is the lane you're going to operate in. This is the lane you're going to lead. This is what I expect out of you. I expect high performance. I expect high partnership. However you do that, I don't care if you do it in Mexico, if you do it in India, that's what I expect. But training that succession, right? That's not a concept that most leaders think about, right? They're like, I'm going to be the CFO forever, right? And very few leaders, I'm glad you mentioned that, very rarely think about that transition, right? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be a director of finance my whole life. You know what I mean? Like I haven't capped myself out yet, but that next person too doesn't want to be the same staff accountant. They may want to be the controller. They may want to have your job. And I love that. I want people to challenge me to take my job. Like I want that,
And I absolutely agree with that. I think that's the initiative that I have. As you mentioned, we all were staff before, and we all became seniors, and we all worked our way up the ladder. So I remember what that felt like. And I also remember how demoralizing it was when I didn't see a runway. I didn't see the next step to my career. I'm just stuck here. So I want people in my department that I work with to feel like, you can come get my title, you can come get it, but you have to earn it. And if you want to earn it, then I can help you get there, because I want to leave this seat at some point one day. And I want to make sure that when I leave, there's someone to step into this role, whether it's here at this company or the next company. So providing that open space. And I'll tell you this, what I found as well is that if you give people that kind of broad, I'm trying to do it here in the picture, that broad landscape, then they don't want to disappoint you.
Right.
So it ends up flipping itself because now they're going to work harder because they don't want me to say, I'll call someone and say, man, I caught you slipping. I saw this journal entry you posted and something is off. Can you go take a look at it? I had someone work for me before that was like, your words of I caught you slipping was just what I needed, because it didn't say that, oh, I caught you doing something wrong, but it said, hey, I'm watching and you may want to go take another look at this. And he just felt like, oh man, I gotta fix it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want you to find any mistakes. Fine, but just know that I'm looking. So it ends up having a reverse effect because then they become more ambitious to get there.
Yeah, they're way more focused. And I think like part of it is this empowerment versus directive driven culture, right? So
Yes.
Shifting to talk a little bit about culture, right? I think a lot of different cultures have revolutionized and changed overnight, right? Like
Yes.
giving an example, like our America's operation, we're so used to all the things we're talking about: empowerment, learning, partnership, high performance, expectation setting. Like we're used to all this stuff, but there's certain businesses out there that are used to a directive driven culture. Go march off the bridge right now at 3 o'clock today. And you have people that go do that, right?
Right.
And that shift I think has been something that for me, I've been talking about for years, right? Like you cannot be a finance leader and the only way you feel like your team's performing is like you overwatching them, right?
Right.
Honestly, for the listeners out there, I call that dinosaur mentality, right?
Yes.
Like, and let's be honest, there's a lot of senior leaders at big companies that have that mentality. So shifting to an empowerment directive driven, like from a directive driven culture to an empowerment culture, what would be some advice that you would give those leaders that are struggling to say, man, I know I'm a directive driven leader. How do I make the changes to be less directive driven and be more of an empowerment from a company culture perspective? What would be your recommendation to those leaders?
So I'm gonna say something very challenging, but it's more to provoke thought. If you believe that you have to be in a directive driven culture, then you're not hiring the right people. And I'll just say that straight up, because I want to bring people on board that I can trust. After a little training, they get it. They know where I'm going. With a little bit of guiding, they get to learn my style, but they know what the goals are for our group. They know what I'm looking for, and you can just run. But if I'm bringing someone on that I have to stand over your shoulder, or I have to give you what to do next, then I didn't make the right hiring decision. And I add to that, I think what's really driving this new wave of leadership is the generations and technology as well. Like the latest generations they want flexibility. They want these open air workspaces. They want these shared spaces where you can come in, dock, work, and leave, or that flexibility where they can work from home or the coffee shop or whatever. So the new age generations are really pushing the corporate landscape to reassess what does the workday look like? Because in years past, you had a computer at your desk and that's where you were expected to be. I have a laptop and I have a docking station at the office. I have a docking station at home, and I can connect to any network wherever I am and get my work done. And that's just changing where we're going, and it's driven by the technology.
Right.
So I think that's what's going to keep pushing it, is that the workforce is saying, we don't want this anymore. We don't want to be in the dark offices with the big walls and all these long office doors, and you can't really see windows or anything. We don't want that anymore. We want to be friendly. We want to be open. We want this ability to come in and out and just get the work done as we see fit.
Yeah. And you talked about it. I think those are really key areas. So for the listeners and people going about that case, flexibility. You got to have people flexibility with work, how they work. I always told myself, like, given that I'm in a matrix kind of relationship, and my direct manager is in Vienna, Austria. Like it's 8:30 there right now. You know what I mean? Like, and he's basically, I remember going through the interview process, and I was exactly the same way, Chris. I remember going through and saying, hey, I was like, Itamar told me, and his name is Itamar, great mentor, love working with him, tremendous amount of value that I learned from him. And I said, Itamar, look, if you need someone to, tell what to do and how to do this, like, I'm not going to be the person, right? Like and I know most European businesses operate that way. Like an Austrian-based company is similar to a lot of German-based companies, right? They're very like, go do this, go do A, B, C, and D, and do that every day for the next 40 years of your life. Like, and people are like, okay, cool, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not that way. So setting those expectations up front was like, if that's what you expect out of me, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be happy. B, you're not going to get the maximum value out of me. And C, I don't think this is what our America's operation needs, right? But it is having that conversation and giving people the flexibility. And I think a lot of times I challenge leaders, give them the flexibility and like, don't go worry about it. Like, there's one thing about giving flexibility, but every 2 or 3 days you're like, oh, so how's this project going? Or did you need anything from me? No. Set clear expectations, hold them accountable, and let them go. Like, go do it.
Yes. And that's the difference in that work style as well. A lot of people want to be the micromanager, touch base with me, tell me what's going on. Did you send this email? Did you save the file? Did you do all this stuff? And it's, you gave me the directive, I'm going to knock it out the park. Now, I will tell you when the game is over and when we're back on the bus heading home, but you don't have to ask me how each inning is going, because it's going to be some ebbs and flows a part of this process. And if you keep asking, it's going to draw you in, and that's not what you wanted. Because if you wanted to manage it, you would have managed it. But you gave it to me. Let me manage it. I got this. Go sit. Go. I got this.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and you see, and across the board, Chris, there's there's so many people that just, for some reason, I don't know if it's like want to give up the control or like they're fearful of their job. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I'm always so amazed by, I have a lot of different CFOs, leaders across the entire world that I talk with. And some of them come talk to me and they ask about that individual struggle. And I'm like, you got to get like, what is the root cause of driving that? Like if people are delivering and you set clear expectations and they're delivering high quality results and hitting the timelines and commitments, that's just all that matters. And that's my hope as the listeners and people going through this, like making that shift is not just a moment in time that we're living in right now, is the future. Because you talk about this demographic shift that's happening. By the year 2025, millennials like us, right, are going to make up 75% of the workforce. Like this is what we're going to want. We're going to be the majority. We're going to want flexibility. We're going to want to work from anywhere. We're going to want to be part of the decision making. Like that's going to happen. And leaders that A, discount that shift, and B, don't build the foundations in their cultures and their processes and their strategies to meet this shift, they're going to drown, bro. They're going to drown.
They are. And you see it struggling. The great thing, and I really put the asterisk on that, because going through the pandemic, unfortunately, we had a lot of bad that happened. But from a corporate side, from a workforce side, it's really have forced a lot of businesses into a world that they were not comfortable with. They were thinking about it. They heard about it. The staff mentioned it. The HR said we should consider it. They were like, no, this is what we're going to do. But this pandemic said, you're doing it. This is what it is. And you've had to figure out, wow, it actually is working. Or we can, with a little bit of tweaking, we can do it. It is possible to continue to manage and run a business being remote. And that's one of the biggest things that we as millennials and the new generation has been asking for or trying to get. So there is a benefit out there that we can say that from a career perspective, we're getting from COVID.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits too. I think when I look back at this challenging year, there's been so much tremendous amount of growth, right? And when we're talking about looking forward, I kind of want to get into concluding and talking about looking forward, right? Like the ability to take this time to learn new skills, right? Like I've learned a lot more about content marketing. I mean, this Collectiv Conversation is something I've never done before in my career, and just spur this up, and like other things that I've been doing. So it's allowed that time. And I think it's the whole perspective of organizations as well as leaders like you and others taking a growth mindset, right? Like, and as you look forward to developing this growth mindset, right? And as you think about accounting, finance, FP&A of the future, what have been those things that you say, like, man, these are going to, if there's 3 areas or whatever areas to focus on that are going to be long standing to really separate yourself? Maybe you want to move from that staff account to that senior, or you want to move to that controller, to that, chief accounting person, or however you want to move. What would be that advice that you would give people to be focused on the future?
So the first thing I would always say is never stop learning. You can go to school, you get a degree, you get your CPA, or you don't have your CPA, you should be getting your CPA, and then you get the role, the career, the job, whatever the case may be, and you feel like, all right, I'm done. Now it's up to the company to promote me. Now it's up to so-and-so to give me a good performance review so that I can get this promotion. And then you stop learning. And so if your listeners, if anyone out there, I would say keep learning, keep reading, keep studying, keep doing those credits, keep learning. Because, and that's across the board. That could just be a random book, but keep doing something to keep your mind engaged. Because if you just stop, then everything's going to keep running past you while you're still in the situation that you were in when you started. Even the job is going to leave you behind. The second thing, to be more specific in that, I remember when I was in school in Microsoft Excel, first when I was in elementary school, computers were kind of new. When I got to college, Microsoft Excel was kind of new. So I started learning Excel in undergrad. And now I've taken a lot of Excel courses, and I feel like, okay, I'm fairly decent in Excel. I wouldn't consider myself an expert. I'm fairly decent. But at some point, Excel is going to be the dinosaur. So I have to be ahead of what's the next thing? What are the students in college learning now? So that when they come into the workforce, they're not teaching me how to do Tableau or how to do the IT and app development, because that's not my lane, but they're teaching me the new data tool for the next wave. So staying ahead of what that is, it will always keep you important and bringing value versus I just know Excel, but you don't really use Excel anymore, so I'm kind of out. Imagine all those accountants that were so used to the big paper that printed. Like when Excel came on, they were kind of like, I don't know what to do. What's a formula?
I can't put this
How
on
do
paper.
I link it? Exactly. So it becomes a challenge. So always staying ahead of what's relevant in your profession. And then staying ahead of the accounting, that's more accounting specific, but just kind of knowing what the accounting and technical things are going in your field as well. For instance, from a finance perspective, I just actually learned this in the CPE this year. There's a lot of different ways to forecast. You can zero-based forecast, which is basically tell me why you need this money. Or you can percent forecast, which is take last year's number, add a percent, and that's what your budget is going to be next year. Or you can kind of set a hard number. This is the amount of money that you're going to get. Make do with it as you see fit, but it's not going to change. So even just learning those core things of forecasting kind of helps me as an accountant, as a CPA, prepare and forecast for the next wave. So it's really just staying relevant or understanding what's relevant to your profession, and that will keep you engaged as well.
I love it, man. I think the growth, the learning new tools, and making sure you're relevant in terms of your topics and conversations to all the listeners across the board, irregardless if you're in accounting, finance, FP&A, I think those are super valuable skill sets to learn and to know. So my last concluding question, I always like to ask people this and like to ask and get their feedback, right? When you think about the legacy that you're leaving right now in the pandemic, and to the listeners out there, to those leaders, those aspiring leaders, to people want to grow, to people want to develop new tools, for people that want to have that passion and that ambition to be more data driven, what would be your advice about the legacy to leave during this time that we're in now?
Okay, I'll answer the question with something that I heard a lot and really didn't appreciate until I became a controller. The words, "we did this last year," is never the right answer. Never the right answer. Under no context, under no circumstances is "we did this last year" the right answer. So if you're being asked why you're doing something, first of all, you should know why, even the core reason of why. We're paying this invoice because this service provider is doing this for us. Or we booked this journal entry because the system X we need to put it into system Y. Or you should know why things are happening in your realm or your box. But the reason or saying we do this now because that's how we did it last year is never the right answer. And I say that because no matter what, you should constantly be looking to improve whatever your situation, process, whatever it is. Should we change it? Should we get rid of it? Why are we still doing it? Maybe we can cut this out and add it to this. Maybe we should figure out how to integrate this system with that system. You should always be looking to improve. One, it'll make sure you're continuously bringing value to the company. And two, it'll personally drive you to keep running forward and to not stand still.
Love it, man. I love it. I remember being an auditor, and that was a phrase. Anytime I heard that, it's like, "Oh yeah, roll the audit. We did the same thing last year." I'm like, no,
Exactly.
like they said the same thing last year. Like we're basically rolling this back to like 6 years ago. Exactly. I love that piece of advice, man. And to all our listeners out there, definitely take that. I always sink my teeth in when it's like, "Oh, that's what we did last year," or you always should know why what you're doing. Like seriously, like that's my thing. Anytime I ask, I'm like, what are the business reasons why we need to do this? Like, I always ask that. Great advice. Chris, I want to thank you so much for your time. Before we get going, if anybody wants to follow you, ask any questions, where should they look you up? What's your socials?
So let me throw it out there. I am on LinkedIn at Chris Word II. That's the two big capital I's, Chris Word II on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well. Now, I'm married. My wife and I have an Instagram. It's at live.laugh.word. Live, laugh, word at Instagram if you just want to follow me and see what's going on. But that's where I am.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, everybody, make sure you check him out. I love the content. Again, I know you do some stuff with Terrell Turner at the Business Talk Library. Absolutely amazing. Love Terrell. Hopefully get him on the Collectiv Conversations as well. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your dialogue. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you.
For all the listeners on Collectiv Conversations, we'll get this published. And Chris, thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome.